I used to run an anime society while I was at university, and I still keep in contact with current and former members, often arranging alumni events over Discord, which have been great during lockdown. I used to have a unique role on Discord, but last year it got removed. However, on the 5th of November, the day the UK entered lockdown 2, the society issued a challenge, a Pokémon Sword and Shield Nuzlocke run. Record your times and the fastest person gets an exclusive Discord role. The challenge was open to current members and alumni, so of course I saw this as a way to reclaim having a unique title on Discord. The only problem was I'd never done Nuzlocke before. I've done a bunch of challenge runs, usually less punishing like an N run, where I release my party after every gym. Or a minimum battles run, one I once thought about making a video for before realising that it's basically just a boneless speedrun. I've also done very casual speedruns of older Pokémon games. I had a tradition of trying to finish each game the day before the new release. However, I wouldn't exactly say I was well prepared for this. The rules for this race were fairly standard for Nuzlockes. Box any Pokémon that faints, can only catch one Pokémon on a route, the first one you meet, can only catch random encounters, not overworld, no using dens to catch Pokémon, no Pokémon camp or jobs, no using gift Pokémon, no trading, no DLC. Every death adds 5 minutes to your final time. I was vaguely familiar with a bunch of speedrunning tips, which I'll go into as I get to them, but I expected my competition wouldn't be aiming for full-on speedrun strats, so I'll try some things that will probably add to my time, like actually using the Nuzlocke catch a Pokémon at the start of each route thing. Alright, here we go. First up, gotta name my character. Can't call her Tonsa, so Asnot. Wait. Asnot. So the first section of the run was pretty easy. I turned off animations and cutscenes, set the text speed to fast, but I'd also hold down A as I mashed through text. Supposedly that's effectively a faster text speed than fast. I joked to a friend that I'd pick anime names for every Pokemon, so I was going to call Sobble Shinon since Blue Sniper, but it was male, so I named it not Shinon. I wasn't going to need him for long anyway. No other real strats were needed until I got to the wild area. Catching a Growlithe would be crucial to my plan. Fortunately, I had Shield, so if I changed the switch date to a day where everywhere would be sunny, I could basically guarantee a Growlithe. There'd be around a 40% chance from various grass patches, so the odds of me not getting one at any are very low. And if I really don't get one, it's so early that a reset's fine. Thankfully, I got one first try, so say hello to Pascal. I then snuck over the bridge, avoiding Mon that could kill me, got a Firestone, evolved Arcanine, and taught Pascal a bunch of moves with the Move Tutor. Arcanine learns all its moves at level 1, so the Move Tutor can give me incredibly powerful moves before you're even at the first gym. When I then bought some X attacks and X special attacks, I was basically unstoppable for a good while. X items have been buffed here, rather than raising stats by 1 level, they're raised twice, meaning you can be incredibly buffed. With this, the route to the first gym was a cakewalk. Barely worth mentioning. I just used a bunch of X special attacks when the enemy was strong. I left the gym at 1:24, a time ahead of most early competitors already. I made my way to gym number 2, however I was worried about this gym with just a fire type, but there was one move that saw me through it all. Burn Up. Burn Up is great because it removes fire typing, even if it can only be used once per fight. It would of course remove my same type attack bonus with fire skills, but I didn't really want to be using fire against the water gym anyway. With this, Nessa was the only real challenge. I buffed defense to the maximum I could, so that I would be able to reduce my HP without being too worried about dying. The reason I did this was to take out her final Dynamax Pokemon. Reversal would be super effective, but Dynamax Pokemon have incredibly high HP, and Reversal increases in power the lower your health is. This was good enough though, and at 1:48 I earned my second badge. I'm afraid I don't have too much footage of the third gym onwards. I prefer playing portably, so all of these clips are saved using the Switch's built-in record functions, that are limited to 30 seconds. But I tried to capture the most important sections and fights, though say goodbye to 1080p quality. For Kabu, the fights on the way to gym just used similar strategies as before, using stat buffing items and healing when needed. However, I did make sure to do enough battles so that I was level 24 by the time I got to the gym, so that I could easily catch the Vulpix with a quick ball. This is because the challenge for the fire gym, you have to earn 5 points against the wild Pokemon. You get 2 for catching a Pokemon and 1 for defeating it. If your level is less than the enemy Pokemon, the odds of you catching are a lot less, and Vulpix is 24 here. Also, since the moves I have on Pascal are Fire, Fighting and Normal, he would be useless against Litwick, one of the Pokemon here, so I just grinded all my points on Vulpixes. Definitely suboptimal, as I used up all my extreme speed PP part way and needed to use an ether that I found earlier to keep my PP up for the boss. Man, I really need to work on my phrasing there. The actual fight against Kaboo was pretty easy, for the most part. First 3 turns against Ninetales, I used X attack to buff my attack through the roof, while Ninetales did tiny bits of damage. Once I used extreme speed, Ninetales went down in one hit. Likewise, so did Arcanine. The problem came when I got to Center Scorch. I only had 1 PP left on extreme speed. I used it and took him down to just under half HP, but now my only attacking move was Reversal, which isn't very effective against Bug type. It took me a couple of uses and my HP got very low, but that just makes Reversal stronger, and I managed to clear it, even if I was worried that I was about to need a reset. The next main part of the run was Route 6. I had a close call with some Team Yell Grunts, but thankfully the sun in this area boosts Fire-type moves. I'd also replaced Reversal with Flare Blitz, since from browsing speedrunner strats, they don't usually need that move after this point. Hop was actually pretty challenging for once. I made sure to buff Pascal's defense and attack at the start of the fight, and though he took a lot of hits, and got paralysed twice, I could just heal him up with some herbs. The gym itself was kind of funny how easy it was though. The 3 gym trainers proved no threat, and Alistair's Yamask has a unique quirk where it likes to spam Disable, so I used this time to get 3x special attacks and 2x speeds in, meaning I could basically one-shot the rest of his team. There's only so many ways I can say I buffed my team with X items, but that's basically what happened with Bede. Most of his mons went down in one hit, with a couple taking 2. Then came my favourite part of the run so far. The gym trainers were a little tough, but with my usual strats they went down, though I did get a very lucky final fight with a critical hit on Mogrem, letting me one-shot it. The leader, Opal, though, was where things got interesting. So Weezing got me to pretty low health, and poisoned. I defeated him, but was in trouble. So what I did was Dynamax, and use Max Flare. This not only did a load of damage, but made the weather sunny, letting me take out Togekiss in one go. I healed on Mawile, and took it out on the second turn, so I had no Dynamax left for Alcremie. I reasoned, however, that with the sunlight, Flare Blitz would take it out in one. It did not. And now I was in the low yellow health, poisoned, and about to be attacked. I was ready to have to do a reset, but thankfully the attack that landed on me wasn't very effective, and I scraped by. Since I'd been answering all the questions right, I had enough speed boost to attack first, so I finished off with a burn up and ended the fight. However, after this came the potential run killer I'd been dreading, and it's time for a quick aside. On a usual speedrun, you'd want to catch a Drillbur at this point. There's a few issues here though. 1, I'm on a Nuzlocke, and there's only 3 places Drillbur spawns in the tall grass. 2 with a 30% chance, and another with 15%. Meaning there's only around a 58% chance of me even encountering one in the right weather. 2, if I did get the right weather for a Drillbur to spawn, that would be a sandstorm, and thus would hurt me every turn, making the catch tricky. The third potential issue here is resolved though. Usually on a run, you would get a Drillbur around level 40, meaning it would be far above your level, and thus have a low catch rate. However, the Drillbur in the wild grass range from 26 to 30, so they're under my level and thus catchable. So to recap, good chance I won't find a Drillbur, but more likely than not, and if I do, I'm going to end up adding a good chunk onto my time trying to get it up to scratch. I changed out Arcanine's moves for some less lethal ones, brought some Dusk Balls, healing items to help me stall, added extra Pokemon to the party, reset the weather, and changed the time to night. Alright, Drillbur hunt. 3, 2, 1, go! Well, I didn't really know what to do next. I could replace Excadrill's Sword Dance with an X attack, but Earthquake is pretty essential. My only chance was to use this Rhyhorn. It would learn Earthquake at level 44, which is quite a way off, but the Watt traders might be able to help me get there if I could somehow gather 800 Watts. Not actually as hard as it sounds though. My rules didn't forbid me from collecting Watts from these dens, just using them to catch Pokemon. I did the good old exploit of changing the date while the game is attempting to connect to the internet, and after about 25 minutes in game, but several days on the clock, I had the TR for Earthquake. Next came stage 2 of my plan. I needed to level up Rhyhorn as efficiently as possible. Oh, I named him Rep because I was panicking about not being able to capture the footage with the Switch's record function. It's short for replacement, as he was the replacement for my Excadrill. I later on renamed him Nier. Rep to Replicant, Replicant to Nier. It took me a while grinding him up. My playtime was 440 by the time I finished grinding. At first I fought the trainers I'd skipped earlier, and then I grinded on Excadrill. Ironic, he's leveling up by defeating the Pokemon he was set to replace. Anyway, my goal was to get him to level 37. I possibly could do a lower level, but I was deep enough into the run that I wanted to be safe. 37 because that's the level of Hop's strongest Pokemon in the next fight. And speaking of that fight, yeah, it was pretty alright. Pascal took down Treevant, but then I switched to Nier, buffed him out on Cinderace as he was spamming Pyro Ball and Agility, and one-shotted the rest with Earthquake. The journey to the Ice Gym was pretty easy. Only one fight was needed from Hop till the gym leader, and that was an incredibly easy fight. However, I made sure to get the TM Smart Strike to teach to Nier, as this helped with type coverage, and also it never misses. Melanie again was pretty fun. Now that I can switch, I'm able to use Burn Up and then switch back to receive my Fire type back. Versus Darumatian, I buffed Arcanine, buffing defense first to give me time to stall, and then one-shotted Darumatian and the following Pokemon. Lapras were Gigantamax, so I had to plan carefully. I made sure my speed had been buffed so I could attack first, and I Dynamaxed to make sure I could take the hit. That way I would be able to get 2 attacks in, and 2 attacks later I won, with a safe chunk of HP left. X items can really trivialise this game. I thought Hop would be a challenge, but I triple buffed attack and buffed speed on Dubwall, since it can barely attack, and this let Nier take down 4 out of 5 with Earthquake. I then switched to Pascal to finish off Hop's final flying Pokemon, thus immune to Earthquake, with Flare Blitz. It wasn't long after this though that I messed up bad. I took out the compulsory Team Yell fight with no trouble, and headed down to Route 9 for the 7th gym. However, I lost my way, and accidentally walked into a fight I could have skipped. This in itself is bad, as it adds more time, but I made it worse. This was a fighting type user. I had a Rhyhorn, who is weak to fighting types. I didn't want to waste time switching, so I thought I could take down his first Pokemon with an Earthquake before it hit me. I was wrong. Nier just scraped by with his life intact. Then came the hail. And again, Nier barely pulled through though. I switched out ASAP to Pascal, and managed to fairly safely beat the guy, but both my Pokemon needed healing. The reason I explored this area was because I'm going to have to start fighting double battles soon, so I was looking for the TM Rock Slide to hit both enemies at once. Earthquake also hits both enemies, but would hit Pascal and likely kill him if I didn't buff his defense. As a last resort, I could bring in a third sacrificial Pokemon that I caught earlier to take a bullet with Earthquake, and take the 5-minute penalty, but Rock Slide would be much better. Marnie was easy. Her first Pokemon can't really damage me, so I set up the buffs against that and destroyed the rest. Piers took a bit of planning. I buffed speed and attack, some on Scrafty, some on Obstagoon, who liked using non-damaging moves. I managed to one-shot my way through the rest of his team. On a roll, I went straight to the next gym without any fights, and that happened. I was kinda at a loss. While I never expected this to be the run that would get me to the top spot, I thought that I'd at least get to finish it. Getting all the way to the 8th gym and failing was tough, but I was determined. We recorded our times as we went, and looking at others, it was clear to me that there were some more serious competitors than I expected, and likely they're also going to do other runs. I failed this first run on the 8th of November. The deadline was in just over 7 weeks, and I only realistically had time to play on weekends. So I estimated that I could probably get around 10 decent length runs in, and plenty of resets half an hour into the game for a Growlithe. I wanted to plan carefully, so over the next 4 weeks I started several runs, got them to the 7th gym, and then stopped, with my aim being that I could use these runs as lives for the final section. I won't bore you with the details of these runs since they are largely the same as the previous one. Rather than just vaguely following a speedrun route though, I kept a lot closer. I picked Scorbunny as my starter, so that I could get the charcoal item to boost Cerberus's fire attacks, and to make the hop fights go quicker. Cerberus was what I called my Arcanines after Pascal, it just seemed fitting. With just 3 weeks to go, I had a few viable runs with Excadrills that had made it past Piers, but we're just going to focus on 2 of them. 2 with very similar stats. The second here is the fastest I'd got, but if I looked at my sum of best segments, there was a good 5 to 10 minute save possible at least. Now the first one had worse time going into it, but that's the most important one. You see, as soon as I failed it, I counted this run as failed, but I kept playing. I'd use this to prepare for my next run, and come up with strategies that would work for me. We're going to look at both runs simultaneously, since that's how I played it. I'd advance a bit in the practice run, use that to progress my main run, and repeat. The first big issue I found was Raihan's gym, where I died on my first run. The first match I'd need to watch out for the super effective water moves. Or if I buffed Excadrill's attack on Cerberus's turn, I'd take out Pelipper, survive the one hit from Sliggoo, and take that out on turn 2. The second match presented the problem of Turtonator's Shell Trap, which could hurt me a lot if it survived a hit. This could have the potential to kill my Excadrill at my current levels. I couldn't guarantee that I'd kill both of them with just one Earthquake. Further still, an Earthquake would kill Cerberus. So I'd buff Cerberus's physical defense and also Excadrill's special defense to be sure. However, Earthquake managed to one-shot them anyway. All the third match required was me to kill Abomasnow first. As long as I also attacked the Hakamaru with Excadrill, I could finish the fight before Eva died. This was actually easier than I thought. I didn't realise I would get time to heal between fights. But the gym leader was what I really dreaded. On my original casual run of the game, this was the only point in the game where I wiped out. And I did it twice. I needed to get as many X attacks onto Excadrill without dying as I could. And ideally get hit by Breaking Swipe as few times as possible, as if I got hit more than once or twice, the debuffs would mean I wouldn't be able to one-shot Raihan's final Pokemon. I'd have to sacrifice my second Pokemon to get that final Earthquake hit in, or would I? Back in Route 2, I'd caught a Rookie D. After my first run, I thought something like this might happen, and so I made sure that the second save I picked to be my real run was one where I'd caught a flying Pokemon. So I just switched out Cerberus for Tokuyami, who I had in my party during the 3 fights before this, and thus he'd levelled up a lot, before dealing the final blow. The equivalent of Victory Road was pretty easy, but I did make a dumb mistake. I charged ahead with my real save, thinking there'd be no problems, and ended up scraping past one fight with just 1 HP left because I forgot to heal. Of course I healed after this fight and was ready for the tournament arc. I practiced these out with Huns the Excadrill rather than Shimon the Excadrill. Huns was slower, but with an X speed, Huns could outspeed all of Marnie's Pokemon. With 2 Sword Dances just to be safe, I'd one-shot everyone. She didn't have quite as free a setup as her last fight, but she still gave me enough time to buff before decimating her. Hop also began with a weak Pokemon, giving me ample time to buff. These fights were both pretty much non-issues on my practice run, and I breezed through them on the real one. Aside from Joy-Con drift making me pick the wrong move a few times, however, thankfully, none of these mistakes cost me the game, and often they still knocked out the enemy. I'm not too underleveled compared to where a speedrunner would be at this point, so the next section was pretty straightforward, but I needed to outspeed Oleana's Pokemon at the end of this section. In a normal speedrun, you could buy Carbos from the Pokemon Center to buff your speed EVs, and surprisingly, while leveling candies were banned, feeding Pokemon vitamins wasn't. And so the problem in my practice run? I didn't think I would need money, so I spent it all on buying new clothes. So I can buy a lot less Carbos than I want to, but hopefully 8 should be enough. I got through the most boring part of the run, Elevator and Spam Earthquake, and made it to Oleana. I wasn't fast enough to outspeed Slazzle, but worse, I still couldn't one-shot the next Pokemon, and thus these 2 hits KO'd me. Second try, Milotic spammed Surf, meaning that if I didn't kill it on my second turn, I'd be dead. Third try, Sword Dance on Milotic, as when I do that, it seems to use Aqua Ring way more. Heal and repeat buff on Serena. Problem being, she would just keep lowering my attack as I buffed it, and my attack couldn't one-shot her, so I died again. Fourth try, I decided to buff against Frostlass instead. It could lower my speed, but if I got 2x speeds and 2 to 3 Sword Dances, I should be able to make it through the rest and not have to worry about Milotic using Surf. I won, but I was worried about my true run. However, this problem largely came because I wasted money that could have been spent on performance-enhancing drugs. So my hope was that on my final run, I could drug up Simone enough to outspeed that Slazzle. But I'd still use Frostlass to buff, it would be slightly slower, but safer. I'd bought more healing items on this run, so I still didn't have the money I'd have liked to buy Carbos, but I got 10. Speed is incredibly important in the run. Not only to increase my speed of doing the run, but also when I'm aiming to one-shot everyone. If I can take out the enemy before they have a chance to attack, I don't need to worry so much about defense or healing. Anyway, before going on to round 2 of the tournament, I went to buy more carbos with my winnings from the previous fights, hopefully to be able to outspeed Nessa's Barraskewda. Back over on my practice run, I still needed to do the next 4 matches in the finals of the tournament, and get the shield, since that was the next milestone for my timesheet. Bede just needed me to use Gardevoir to buff, but Nessa was the one that I was worried about. The aforementioned Barraskewda's speed was one thing, but also I'd need to use Rock Slide twice, a move that has a 10% chance of missing. 10% chance I can deal with those odds, but using it twice means that it's actually a 19% chance, which when I'm right at the end of the run, isn't odds that I'm happy to gamble on. There was an easy solution to this problem, one that would solve a lot of my problems, but also one I avoided using a lot. Dynamaxing. Dynamaxing has a fairly lengthy cutscene both at the start and end, and since my run was already fairly unoptimised in terms of minor time saves, every little I could save helped. I was really frustrated here. I had a couple of other runs that made it past peers, and I technically would have the time to go through and do another run to improve at these little moments, but there'd be no guarantee that these runs would make it to the end. And if I was honest, while I enjoyed my first couple of runs, I was starting to get a bit sick of spending so much of my free time on this game. Anyway, for these reasons, I could Dynamax on Nessa's Barraskewda. This meant I would be able to take the hit if I wasn't fast enough, and then on Pelipper I could use the Dynamaxed version of Rock Slide, which couldn't miss. I'd still have to land one Rock Slide on her first Pokemon, but only one, which was much better odds. And the resulting Sandstorm of Max Rockfall made sure my final attack would be done in one shot. The next 2 fights were much easier though. Alistair, I could use his Duskinior to buff, and with Raihan, after one-shotting his Torkoal, Turtonator kept using Shell Trap, so I'd buff on that. I just ran from most fights on the way to get the shield, giving me a time of 5:42 on my practice file, and 5:14 on my real file. Rose was incredibly easy on the practice run. All his Pokemon are weak to Earthquake, so one Sword Dance and they go down easy. But I ran into a problem. Eternatus one-shotted me with a crit. Now theoretically, I can afford to lose a Pokemon here. The only fights after this are Eternamax, which is very scripted, and Leon, where I can just use Eternatus. I'm not sure, but I think Eternatus' stats might be randomly generated, so even with Shimon being the faster Excadrill, there's no guarantee that I'd be faster than Eternatus. I'm sure all I would need to do would be to land one Earthquake. Was it worth the gamble though? I've been taken down by crits a couple of times between my playthroughs, and in my final playthrough I've tried to reduce the chance of getting taken down by one, usually by buffing on fights where even a crit can't take me down in one turn and one-shotting the rest. However, this made me realise that actually, the Chairman Rose fight could take me down in the first hit too. There's only 4 fights left. Rose, Eternatus, Eternamax and Leon, but if any of them crit me, I lose 5 minutes from a death, and in the case of the first 2, the run is probably over. So I took a detour to the Lake of Outrage to get a Focus Sash item. The actual journey added less than a minute onto the playtime. Focus Sash would let me survive one potentially fatal hit if at full HP. Of course, giving it to my Excadrill would mean it couldn't hold the Soft Sand item, which strengthened ground type moves, so I'd test to see if I could still one-shot Rose and Eternatus without the Soft Sand buff. I could. Then, for the Eternamax fight, now that I couldn't get one-shotted, I needed a guard spec to stop my stats being lowered, and let the doggos finish it off, since this was a 4-on-1 fight. Right, so back on my main file, straight away the Focus Sash saved me from a crit by Rose. Then Eternatus landed a crit on me, thankfully a non-fatal one, and then I landed a crit back. They really must have upped the crit rate for these fights, or I'm just incredibly lucky/unlucky. I'd give a play-by-play of the final fight, but it was basically just, I buffed my defense since I didn't have the Focus Sash's protection, the doggos did massive damage, Hop killed himself. To keep some suspense going for this video, I decided that I wouldn't practice on Leon. I was pretty confident that my team could beat his, and by my team I mean Eternatus. I buffed on his Aegislash, the Sword and Shield Pokemon. I see what you did there, Game Freak. Actually, probably everyone did. And then between Flamethrower and Dynamax Cannon, his team were destroyed in no time. All that was left was for me to sit through the unskippable credits to see the time on my save file. And so my final clear time was 5:38. Less than that first run took to fail, and I had about 2 weeks left before the deadline. However, it wasn't over yet. Other people were still doing their own runs at the same time. And to keep things competitive, I gave out a couple of tips to help some of the other people running. But I was betrayed. One of my tips was turning animations and cutscenes off, which wasn't in the rules I initially stated, so it should have been fine. However, my strat was ratted out to one of the guys running, who changed the rules to now require cutscenes and animations on. I was a bit annoyed, and so were the other people who were actually in the running to win, so we agreed that we'd just add 9 minutes on at the end for the skipped cutscenes, and we'd all keep animations off on the save files we'd already started. Because there's no way they could know we weren't using animations, and we didn't want to have to reset perfectly good runs. However, it was only after I finished this pretty decent run that I realised, I'm making this into a video. They 100% will know I'm not using animations, thus invalidating all of my runs and putting me at a disadvantage. And so, with just over 2 weeks to go, while I was still working 9 to 5 and working on both this script and my previous video, the grind began again. Thanks to my many runs now, I'd become a lot more experienced, and got a better feel for the game. Not getting a drill bell was basically the only reason I ever needed to reset a run, since I'd decided if I wanted to be sure to win with this handicap, I'd need to be playing at least semi-optimally. My final run ended up being a little slower than my previous run, as expected, but even without the cutscenes and animations, towards the second half I started to play a little more cautiously, Dynamaxing regularly and incurring the half-minute penalty each Dynamax cutscene brought with it. This was partially because if I failed here, I didn't think I'd have the energy to try another run, but also because it was getting close to Christmas. I didn't expect anyone else would be starting their run now to try and beat me before the end of the year. I just needed to close the run out. I ended up scraping my run in just over 6.5 hours, finishing on Boxing Day. I was only a bit over half the time of the next closest player, and most of the people who were also going to try hard had given up. I was safe. Then came the morning of the 31st of December. I was kinda sad no one else had got close. I had to rethink. Was going this hard really worth it just to show off to some kids who couldn't have cared either way? If I was the only one tryharding, wouldn't it make me look bad? Well, I got a message from one of the genuine competitors that morning. I had no more time to defend my record. My splits were on the online form to see, for my rival to base his runoff, and he seemed fairly consistently to be only a few minutes behind me. The day progressed and the sheet slowly updated. Around the evening he'd gotten to the 7th gym, very close to me. Those 5 minutes added on for the Death of Sacrifice might make the difference. Combined with the safer Dynamaxed fights, yeah, I was in a tight position. Going into getting the sword/shield, we were basically neck and neck, assuming he had no deaths. But the clock was getting close to midnight. There was only just over an hour left in the day, but he only had 30 minutes left to play. And at around 11:30, the final results came in. I'd made it. We congratulated each other over a good fight, and I thanked him for both making me look less like the sole tryhard, and also adding some tension to the end of my video. But winning aside, how did I feel about the run? It was pretty fun, but I think the concepts of Nuzlocke runs and speedruns don't exactly mesh. And if I'm honest, I'd rather do one or the other rather than both. That said, this has especially reignited my interest in speedruns. Working out the best strategy to achieve a specific objective in the shortest time possible is just a really appealing concept to me. As I said at the start of the video, I've only really done casual speedruns before, and this isn't just Pokemon, it's something I'd love to try in general. But not this individual game. When I eventually stop being sick of Shield now, I'll probably do a regular Nuzlocke run for my own enjoyment, as challenge runs have really made this game a much more enjoyable experience, even with all of its many flaws. I can't really make a good segue into an outro, so all that remains is for me to thank you for watching this. I'm trying to get into a pattern of monthly uploads. I'm working on a stupidly long Mass Effect video essay, but that won't be out next month. So for February, expect a shorter video on a very different topic. As always, stay safe out there guys, and enjoy the rest of your day.